Woof woof and namaste. This is Hill Dog and welcome to Kanha Cast, a series of conversations with visitors and residents of Kanha Shanti Vanam, the International Centre for Heartfulness. So a few days ago, I had the pleasure of sitting down and having a conversation with Vinamre Kasanaa. Vinamre Kasanaa is one of India's biggest podcasters. He has a podcast called Dostcast, which gets millions of views. And he's interviewed all sorts of people from all walks of life. And the podcasts are always very interesting. Do check it out. So he was here in Kanha Shanti Vanam to meet Daaji, the heartfulness guide. He was going to record a podcast with him. So he was here just for 1.5 days. And after he recorded the podcast with Daaji, and just before actually he left for the airport, we had the opportunity to sit down together. And the idea was just to take a little soundbite from him, ask him how his experience in Kanha was, ask him how it was to meet Daaji. But it actually turned into a full-blown conversation on writers, rock and roll, inspiration, and podcasting, and also the future. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Vinamre Kasanaa. This is the Dostcast story. So Vinamre, welcome to the Kanha studio. Thank you for taking time out and being here with us. You've just had a day and a half at Kanha. So first thing I'd like to ask you, what are your first impressions of the campus?
It's huge. I've never been to a place of this magnitude. It's a whole ecosystem. अपने आप में पूरा शहर है. It's self-sustaining. The people here are extremely nice. I don't feel like I'm in Hyderabad at all. I feel like मैं कहीं और ही आया हुआ हूँ.
तो आपको जब दिल्ली से यू बोर्डेड द फ्लाइट, आपको पहले अमन ने बताया होगा दैट यू आर कमिंग टू कान्हा. व्हाट वाज योर एक्सपेक्टेशन? कुछ एक्सपेक्टेशन था आपका?
आई थॉट कि हम जाएंगे, हम एक बड़े से मेडिटेशन हॉल में बैठेंगे, मेडिटेशन सीखेंगे, फिर कुछ डिस्कोर्सेज होंगे, दैट्स अबाउट इट. एंड आई ब्रीफली न्यू अबाउट दाजी, बट देयर इज़ वन थिंग टू हियर अबाउट समवन and kind of get an idea of them using the social media profile and having friends refer to the whole practice. And completely दूसरी चीज़ ये होती है जब आप actually आते हो, because one, the size of the place. Second, I've been constantly chaperoned and helped in so many ways to ease into the practice. And I've been asked to do this multiple times. लोग आके volunteer कर रहे हैं, हम सिखा देते हैं, हम करा देते हैं. I'm astounded. I didn't think कि इतना easy होता है. I mean, just speaking to Daaji today about the practice, how he had a successful business, still does, and also does this. When I come to meditation centers, I bring a fair bit of skepticism, right? I am a little skeptical. कुछ तो कुछ सीन तो होगा. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि सिर्फ meditate ही करना है और इतनी खुशी है यहाँ पे और लोग चिल होकर रह रहे हैं. But I have nothing to complain about.
I think that skepticism is something that a lot of people can identify with, because हमारे देश में what one of my friends calls बाबाबाजी. बाबाबाजी बहुत होती है. So it's healthy to carry that skepticism with you. But today you met Daaji and you had a conversation with him. What was that like?
I was honestly surprised because अभी से पहले मैं और अमन बैठ के बात कर रहे थे. जैसे ही मैं बात खत्म करता हूँ, you're gonna fill in the pause and say something. That's generally the cadence and the rhythm on which we operate. With Daaji, he stops, thinks about it, responds. And in that silence, मेरे को ऐसा लगता है मेरी पूरी existence मेरे सामने दिख गई मेरे को. कारण क्या है कि it is a two-way conversation, but I learned that you have to be very deliberate with what you say. You know, some people are very interested in how they sound like, so they speak a lot. And they hope that everything that comes out of their mouth is gold. But with him, he measures his words very carefully. And because I'm not a heartfulness practitioner, मैं तो as a podcaster आया था, तो मैं शायद उनसे ऐसे सवाल पूछ पाया जो लोग नहीं पूछते. और उन्होंने शायद मेरे से आज ऐसे बात करी जो शायद वो नहीं करते होंगे, जो मेरे को लगा, मतलब बाद में लोगों के रिएक्शन गेज करके. आई इनिशियली थॉट कि यार ऐसा ना ऑफेंड हो जाए, क्योंकि मैं कुछ बातें पूछ रहा था कि यार मैं दिल में देखता हूँ, मेरे दिल में तो गुस्सा भरा हुआ है, आप हार्टफुलनेस की बात करते हो. एट दैट पॉइंट यू वुड एक्सपेक्ट मोस्ट जो लोग होते हैं जो ये ऐसी चीज़ें एस्पाउस करते हैं, कोई स्पिरिचुअल टीचर है या प्रीचर है या प्रैक्टिशनर है, दे विल हैव अ बिटल ईगो एंड दे विल से समथिंग कि आपने ऐसे कैसे बोल दिया. बट आई वॉज वेरी हैप्पी टू सी दैट he would entertain all questions and sincerely answer them.
Sure. That's very visible with Daaji, that he's very accepting of everything, and and the other thing you spoke about, the deliberate, the measured words, the exact dosage in a way. Also, you took part in some heartfulness meditation sessions. आपने कितने sessions लिए अभी तक? एक करा है, 2 करे?
I think कल करा था, but I wasn't initiated into. मुझे technique पता नहीं थी. Roughly what Sujit told me, कि focus on your heart. So I did it yesterday in a group setting at his house. And then आज फिर Chirag, who's also here, not here in this room, but in this
Yeah.
massive complex, he initiated me. उसके साथ करा था. फिर then did one with Daaji in the group setting. So about 3 then.
Oh, nice. And would you like to share your experience? Anything? Did you feel anything? Not feel anything?
The first time yesterday, I mean, जैसे normally आंखें बंद करके बैठते हैं, because I do practice the kind of meditation I practice when मेरे को लगता है कि सब कुछ overwhelming हो रहा है, मेरे ख्याल वगैरह भी, तो फिर I just close my eyes. No breathing is involved. तो पहले तो कल यही था, because that centers you. Typically, I have a bad habit of filling every waking moment with scrolling on my phone, right? So once that breaks away, you kind of like just get all this unsettled stuff up to the surface, and you get a little bit more centered. आज when I was officially initiated, आज मेरे को बहुत अच्छा लगा, because we actually sat in silence for a while after the meditation. And then with Daaji, it was a longer session today in the hall. वहाँ पे it was challenging for me, because when I was sitting down, I was fidgeting, all of that. But अगर बहुत rigid practice होती, तो I would be chided for it by people. But देख रहा था कि लोग भी हिल डुल रहे हैं, because it's hard to sit, on your buttocks for so long. But because it was challenging, I think the benefit also was greater by the end of it.
Sure. So you mentioned you already meditate in a way. Is that something that's been part of your life growing up? Were you always interested in spirituality, or something that's just you picked up?
I would do Om chants, because my maternal grandfather is pretty religious. और उसके बाद फिर when I went to college, I discovered these meditation apps, Waking Up by Sam Harris, and then I would just do it as a part of my self-improvement morning routines. Wake up, journal, meditate, the whole, 5 a.m. club kind of deal, all of that jazz. And then I did Vipassana, but then I didn't practice it. फिर उसके बाद तब से it's just been simply closing my eyes and just settling in. I don't have an active meditation practice now.
So coming to your profession, you're a podcaster. I mean, बचपन में आपको लगा था कि बड़े होके podcaster बनूंगा? This is, I think that didn't even exist actually when we were growing up, that profession.
RJs होते थे.
Correct. So what were your idols growing up? I mean,
my idols were honestly writers and rock stars. I mean, pehle it was people like Khushwant Singh and whoever I was reading at that time, and my dad's Forbidden Library. और उसके बाद it was the Jim Morrisons, the Freddie Mercurys, ये सब थे. But I never thought that I would speak for a living, like full time, like make it my profession. I mean, I still want to do writing full time, but I find that this is what works better. Yeah.
So you wanted to do pursue writing full time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trained as a copywriter.
Wow.
But I, for some reason, find that people resonate with this more. People resonate with like a real person speaking as opposed to writing. Writing doesn't have the same kind of broad audience. Like, it will take a longer time to make a career as a writer. And when I say writer, I mean generally an internet writer. Someone who writes pretty viral blog posts or tweets or threads, that kind of. A novel writer, you can forget about money. I mean, in the start. So, also because I don't want to deny the techie part of me. Podcasting is great. You just, plug in a microphone or a phone and broadcast your voice to people. So it's what I like to do, and it's where I'm meeting the market halfway as well.
Wow. And your podcast, Dostcast, has been extremely successful. I mean,
it's got 6 lakh subscribers, but 30 to 40 million views per month. Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot. But what do you think is the most rewarding thing about being a podcaster?
I think it's the conversations that happen after the podcast, because it's like you're doing a conversational tango, और फिर podcast खत्म होता है, फिर उसके बाद the other person feels like they can trust you. And once the mic goes off, they tell you things that they've never told anyone. And so I'm basically like an unlicensed psychologist, therapist. The other thing that is rewarding is because there is no corporate control. आप किसी अच्छे एक्सपर्ट को, जैसे कोई ऑथर हो गया, कोई हिस्टोरियन हो गया, कोई कमेडियन हो गया, लाइक एन एक्सपर्ट इन कॉमेडी और बीइंग फनी, राइट, आप उनको ला सकते हो मुफ्त में, उनके आइडियाज़ को आप ब्रॉडकास्ट कर सकते हो और लोग उन्हें मुफ्त में कंज्यूम कर सकते हैं. उन्हें बर्कली कॉलेज ऑफ म्यूज़िक में जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है वो एक्सेस करने के लिए, या उन्हें 2 साल के हिस्ट्री की डिप्लोमा कोर्स करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. तो इट्स लाइक द एजुकेशनल पार्ट ऑफ पॉडकास्टिंग इज़ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग बिकॉज maybe you and I have had some privileges to go to good institutions. हर किसी के पास नहीं होते.
Sure.
तो जो लोग tier 3 cities में, tier 4 cities के अंदर, उनको घर बैठे बैठे ऐसी information मिल रही है that I think would not be possible say 5-6 years ago, and not possible in Hindi or English for that matter.
बिल्कुल.
Right.
Also, you mentioned your idols. You mentioned Jim Morrison, Freddie Mercury. Did you
Yes.
mention? So I guess music's been a big part of your life.
100%.
How did that start?
I think it started. My dad went to Bihar for college, and he had a roommate from Nagaland. So he visited us once. तो मैं काफ़ी छोटा ही था, 6-7 साल का होऊंगा या 8 साल का होऊंगा, 3rd grade. And उस टाइम पे पेन ड्राइव्स बड़ी prevalent थी, CDs were like semi dying and pen drives had come up. तो वो पेन ड्राइव लेके आए थे एक म्यूज़िक की. My dad doesn't listen to rock and roll at all. और उन्होंने मेरे को वो दी. And I remember उस पेन ड्राइव के अंदर Scorpions थे,
Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin.
Led Zeppelin नहीं था उसमें. So it's 80s rock bands थोड़े बहुत, ठीक है, lots of ABBA, Van Halen था, ठीक है, ये सारे bands थे. None of the Pink Floyd-esque, वो सब मुझे ढूंढना पड़ा.
Sure.
But like and lots of like Christian rock from the Northeast, ये सब था.
Sure.
तो ये सब मैंने सुनना शुरू करा. आई रियली लाइक्ड द साउंड ऑफ रॉक. मेरे को बड़ा अच्छा लगा वो. आई फेल्ट फीलिंग्स ऑन द इनसाइड आई हैडंट फेल्ट, एंड इट फेल्ट लाइक. और फिर जो रॉक एंड रोल का कैरेक्टर होता है ना, दैट रिबेलियस नेचर, एंड यू नो द 3 words दैट यू एसोसिएट विद रॉक एंड रोल, सेक्स, ड्रग्स, रॉक एंड रोल, वो टैग लाइन थी. आई जस्ट गॉट सोल्ड ऑन दैट. आई वाज लाइक, ये मेरा काउंटर कल्चर है. एंड देन आई नेवर लुक बैक. आई वुड जस्ट कीप रीडिंग विकिपीडिया आर्टिकल्स अबाउट बैंड्स कैसे बने, कैसे ब्रेक हुए, किसका क्या करियर था. Just download lots of discographies through LimeWire, do a bunch of things, and yeah.
Wow, that shows. We were talking about the generation gap this morning with Daaji. We were speaking about it. But हमारी generation में वो फर्क है कि आपका पेन ड्राइव से इंट्रोडक्शन हुआ, हमारा कैसेट से हुआ था. कैसेट्स आते थे उस टाइम पे, और कोई कज़न बाहर से कोई कैसेट ले आता था, एंड इट यूज्ड टू बी, आई स्टिल रिमेंबर, हमारे मोटर हेड का एक कैसेट, एस ऑफ स्पेड्स और समथिंग, एंड दैट्स हाउ माय
लेमी किल मिस्टर का जो बैंड था.
एब्सोल्युटली, लेमी वाज अ लेजेंड. एंड मोटर हेड, you know why I was attracted to Motorhead, because I also used to read stuff, and you would get like कहीं खान मार्केट में या कहीं सेकंड हैंड रोलिंग स्टोन मैगजीन मिल जाती थी विद द कवर फटा हुआ, तो वो घर ला के एंड यू रीड के क्या चल रहा है. एंड आई रेड दैट Motorhead was the loudest band in the world. I said, man, I need this. So I told my cousin, boss, Motorhead की एल्बम ले आना यार. And of course वो cassettes में इंट्रोडक्शन होता था. Did you ever get interested in playing rock and roll?
I had a band in college and in school. I ran a music venue for 2 years.
Wow. What was the band called if people want to look it up?
It was so bad. We had no bassist. वो वाले बैंड्स नहीं होते जिसके अंदर लोगों के हाफ हार्टेड रॉक एंड रोल ड्रीम्स होते हैं, लेकिन लड़कियों के तुम्हारे बैंड के अंदर अडेल सुनने वाले ड्रीम्स हैं. लड़कों को एक्चुअली बस कूल बनना है, तो तुम रियल रॉकर हो पर तुम्हारी स्किल अच्छी नहीं है और औरों की स्किल अच्छी है. इट्स लाइक दैट बैंड दैट फोर्सफुली गेट्स टुगेदर टू डू वन फेयरवेल इन अ स्कूल.
और प्लेलिस्ट पे बहुत फाइट होती होगी कि क्या बजाएंगे.
अरे टीचर्स, सो I wanted to play I Want to Break Free by Queen. We didn't have a bassist. Imagine the entire band runs without a bassist. ठीक है. तो जैसे ही मैंने बोला I fallen in love वाली line है, because we had to get the lyrics vetted by the teachers. Teacher is like, love तो बोल ही नहीं सकते. तो I remember singing I've fallen in mud. Imagine that. तो इस लेवल की censorship चल रही थी. In college, my roommates, 2 of them, one of them, उसका जो his grandfather, he handed him down a beautiful blues guitar. My other friend, he was a guitar maestro from Mexico. He had वो Jimmy Page वाला guitar होता है ना, red वाला.
Yeah.
That guitar. And so in college, I was just around musicians all the time, jamming non-stop.
So you played guitar or?
I played rhythm guitar and noodling here and there, but I would sing mostly.
Wow.
And then we formed a band briefly for a rock and roll showcase, and lost. But then I decided कि better ये है कि हम music venue चलाएं. तो मैंने और मेरे रूममेट ने अपने बेसमेंट के अंदर, we would ask people to pay $5, And bands from Berklee College of Music would come and play, and like local bands from Boston, they would come and play. We ran that for 2 years.
Oh, in Boston.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And in Delhi, when you came back, any musical ventures there?
In Delhi, honestly, the problem was skills, because I was not as skilled at just coming up with stuff. I'd gotten really good at jamming. And यहाँ पे मेरे आसपास मेरे bored cousins थे, तो मैं उनको force करके ला तो सकता हूँ, but it's not like serious musicians wanted to play with me. And I did not know enough in the scene. I lived in Faridabad, so I had like a smaller band of musicians to play with. Yeah.
And current playlist Spotify Wrapped is on everybody's timeline right now. What's your Spotify Wrapped
I can
2020?
actually look it up. बहुत weird है यार, अब तो rock. I listen to a lot of Chris Cornell.
Oh, wow.
Here, I can just how do I do Spotify Wrapped? Yeah, those are Vice Wrapped. Lots of rap also now, because as life gets hard, you tune into rap. Or rap bhi Hindi wala rap, because I don't know if you've heard Seedhe Maut.
Seedhe Maut, yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. There's also lots of jazz numbers. मतलब बहुत mixed playlist है, बहुत random है.
So among the podcasts you've done, has it had like a music tilt or?
I get lots of musicians on because I love talking to them. मैं थोड़ा ज़्यादा type A person हूँ, in the sense कि मैं पूरे रात स्टूडियो में नहीं बिता सकता. I think it's a colossal waste of my time, because they spend nights in the studio making something. But उनसे मिलके मज़े आते हैं. It's very good to vibe to music and then meet the creator and just have a conversation. And because I have skin in the game in music, I've played music, I think I can actually have a real conversation with them, as opposed to ask them generic questions like, so what was the process of making the album? Which is like, ठीक है, but surface level है.
So you must have seen the music scene change also from that time. जो pen drive आपके father के friend लाए थे घर, and you plugged it in and you heard rock music. And now when you have music on your phone, on Spotify, you can access music. So it's a sea change, right? Access to music has changed like crazy.
Right.
Where do you see the future going?
I think there's going to be a small chunk of vinyl and CDs coming back. Vinyl culture दोबारा आ गया है.
True.
Because जो अब लोग streaming apps से bored है ना, तो उनको जो एक original uninterrupted curated listening करनी है, they're moving back to vinyls. It's a small subculture, but बीच में 2000s तक non-existent हो गया था. 2010s तक वो वापस आ गया. Streaming is going to be there for sure. It's not going to die anytime soon. There's एक बड़ा weird tangent, because I consume a lot of YouTube and I make like YouTube videos, right? In essence, people are discovering music through YouTube videos, through 15-second clips and 30-second clips, and those songs are never complete songs. वो बने ही उसके लिए होते हैं. Sometimes they're only 15 seconds. So you'll see, I have a 9-year-old cousin. He knows certain tunes. वो actually real गाने नहीं है, but they were kind of spliced together from somewhere, and then they become the music that is in your head.
Yeah, I think Spotify has a playlist called the Top TikTok.
हाँ, वो roughly ऐसा ही है. There's this whole new trend on YouTube called the Sigma Male Grind Set, something like that. और उसके अंदर जो गाने हैं ना, most of them you've never heard, but they became famous through being discovered on YouTube and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. और उनको सुन के मजे आते हैं, because if you make a video with that song, it's bound to blow up.
But of course, the flip side is that music is so accessible. Everybody has access to music. I don't have to pay for music anymore. तो पैसा बनाना भी बैंड्स के लिए उतना ही ज़्यादा मुश्किल हो गया है.
Yeah, live events. मैं बहुत सारे म्यूजिशियन से बात करता हूँ. Live events उनको करना ज़रूरी हो गया है. Some have tried the whole monetizing your audience space, which is कि आप अपनी खुद की NFTs निकाल लो, ये सब कर लो. Ultimately, it's probably like it's super hard to be a musician, because discoverability बहुत ज़्यादा है, exposure बहुत ज़्यादा है, लेकिन पैसे कमाना इतना आसान नहीं है, because पहले you could actually monetize CD sales.
Sure.
Right, in the days of Planet M, you could monetize vinyl sales. Ab, I just think it's events.
True. So this morning when you were speaking to Daaji, you asked him about his favorite books, top 5. What about you? Do you read a lot?
On and off, matlab, whenever I can. I used to read a lot as a kid. Now it's significantly reduced. The last book that I'm reading is called The Vagabond's Way.
Mm-hmm.
It's by this guy called Rolf Potts. और वो दुनिया भर में लॉन्ग टर्म वर्ल्ड ट्रैवल करता है, लाइक बेयर मिनिमम पे, स्पेंडिंग वे टू मच टाइम इन वन प्लेस एज अपोज टू सारी जगहें कवर करना.
The bucket list sort of travel कि यहाँ चले गए, यहाँ चले गए, यहाँ चले गए. Not that.
Not that. Pilgrimages, quests, that kind of vibe. So it's 366 meditations on vagabonding, and each is like a call to adventure, to go out and see the world. And वो बहुत सारे quotes use करता है, anywhere from Ibn Battuta to Pico Iyer, सबको cite करता रहता है किताब के अंदर. So I've just been reading that.
Nice. So you told me you consume a lot of stuff on the internet, on YouTube and Spotify. So what about your favorite channels or your favorite podcasts?
I honestly, it's going to sound so basic, but I just built my podcast seeing Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss. मैं उससे ज़्यादा नहीं देखता because I find that consuming too much content in my own genre just वो bleed in हो जाएगा मेरे स्टाइल के अंदर. I don't want to do that. I think फिर मैं अगर वहाँ पे भी, because I think the best feedback you can get is directly in the eyes of your guest or how you feel after a conversation. उसके बाद किसी और के स्टाइल को अगर आप मिमिक करने की कोशिश करते हो तो that's the reason why I actually don't listen to podcasts at all. I make a lot of podcasts, but I don't listen to them.
Wow, that's interesting because I know a lot of musicians who actually don't listen to any music at all. They make a lot of music, but they don't listen to music. In fact, one of my best friends, if there's music playing at my house, when he comes over, he switches it off.
हाँ, musicians को समझ नहीं आता because I have this rapper friend also same problem. But then I see कि his skill is not going any up. तो मतलब मैं podcasting में समझ सकता हूँ because दूसरा बंदा भी बातें ही कर रहा है.
Sure.
Right? अगर आप किसी और का म्यूजिक सुनते हो, आपको पता लगेगा अच्छा he uses this chord, he uses this effect. Plus a long form conversation, I don't think you can parrot someone's style. It's so hard.
True.
Because if you're boring, you're going to be boring in after 7 minutes clock in. You can be super interesting before 7 minutes. 7 मिनट का personality bleed out ही हो जाएगी. तो ये सी है.
तो वो आप पाते हो क्या? Is that something that you encounter often, that there's it's boring or it's difficult to carry the conversation forward?
No, that means it's a disservice to my guest. That means I'm doing a horrible job if I can't carry the conversation. फिर मैं host कर ही क्यों रहा हूँ? वो चीज़ आना natural है when you're first starting out, and that feeling might still come in, but we have to define what it means to carry the conversation. अगर मेरे सामने कोई आया है और वो बहुत एक्साइटेड है बात करने के लिए और वही बात करे जा रहा है, तो इससे बढ़िया क्या हो सकता है? Why do I have to appear to be intelligent on camera or on audio? यार नहीं मैं भी होस्ट हूँ, मेरी भी बात सुनो. मतलब I am just a curator, right? Sure, I have some skin in the game, I have some experience in life. मैं भी बात करूँगा उसके बारे में ऑर्गेनिकली. मुझे आपके सामने कूल क्यों बनना है कि आप मेरे को बहुत बढ़िया फाड़ बात बता रहे हो अपनी जिंदगी के बारे में? नहीं, पता है ये मेरे साथ भी हुआ था. मतलब ये तो वो वाली बात है ना, वन अप करने वाली.
Sure.
That might work when you're like, I don't know, actually, I don't think that works anywhere. Unless you're trying to like, get with a girl somewhere और तुम ऐसे दिखा रहे हो कि नहीं मैं भी दो बंदे जब लड़ाई कर रहे होते हैं. तो honestly, you can see with someone's eyes and their expressions कि वो कब बोर हो रहा है या बोर हो रही है, and that आप उसे pivot कर सकते हो. You can ask something else. If you think that they're enjoying it, you double down on that and you ask questions that lead them into that story more. आप वो सब कर सकते हो. तो अगर आप जोन आउट, मेरे को किसी ने कुछ दिन पहले पूछा था आप जोन आउट नहीं होते. अगर मैं जोन आउट हो रहा हूँ मेरे को ये करना ही नहीं चाहिए.
Sure.
क्योंकि फिर तो ये है कि isn't this like a passion project that is like a full time job now? अगर इसमें भी आपको दिक्कत है तो फिर तो आप like I don't think अगर आप को कोई इससे भी बढ़िया और अच्छी चीज़ दे देगा क्रिएटिव एंडेवर, you will still zone out.
Sure. So like you were asking about top 5, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. What are your top podcasts that you've done? The ones you most enjoyed?
It's so hard to say that. So I will say जो तो बहुत आराम से जाते हैं वो तो बढ़िया होता है. Talking to Daaji was tough today.
Why do you think that?
यार क्योंकि ना he's someone who is used to speaking in a way that लोग उनसे सवाल पूछते रहते हैं. तो मैं उनसे ऐसे बात नहीं कर सकता और दाजी क्या हाल है, क्या चल रहा है.
Sure.
मैं चाहता हूँ ऐसे करना idly. So for me, then my questions have to be really good. So that was tough.
So does it usually involve a lot of research? I mean, did you
100%.
watch Daaji videos before?
Yeah. So what I did is I did not consume too much Daaji content, but I engaged with the book and the and the practice, heartfulness practice. The reason for that is, especially for people like Daaji, who are used to giving spiritual packets of wisdom, you consume too much and you run the risk of getting the conversation to a place जहाँ पे वो बातें वही बोलेंगे जो पहले बोल चुके हैं.
Is repetition.
Correct. And it's like, what's the point? I'm basically setting it up for him to say something he's already said. Instead, मैं हमेशा नहीं करता हूँ. Usually I overconsume so that I am well prepared, right? In case there's a lull in the conversation, I can always bring it back to some subject that they are interested in, or they can give a behind the scenes of. In this case, the book, my interactions at this place, my immersion in Kanha, and जो सवाल मेरे अंदर आ रहे थे. That's the approach that I took.
Wow. But it went off well, I think, as someone who was just listening. I think it went off well. Whatever method you applied, it seemed to work.
I think so. It is also difficult because, when you're not, like, लोगों के लिए awkward कब होता है? जब वो उन्हें पता है कि ऐसा moment आ रहा है where the other person has now just stopped talking. You have two options. या तो आप कोई नया question या कुछ चीज़ frame करोगे, or you stick your neck out and become vulnerable and speak about something. So today I think I did that, where I essentially, by quoting it and calling it general people, I was able to get answers to a lot of questions that I was facing. And for some people that's like a problem, because आपकी ego पे वो hit होती है कि मुझ में गुस्सा है, मेरे रिलेशन किसी का अच्छे नहीं है, ये सब बातें अगर मैं बोलूँगा तो दुनिया को पता लग जाएगा.
Sure.
But I'd rather do that than pretend to ask questions on someone else's behalf and be a neutral interviewer. फिर मुझ में और रेडियो मिर्ची के आरजे में कोई फर्क नहीं है.
Sure. So in your wide podcast repertoire, you must have had to ask some controversial questions also. How do you draw the line from being like the host and you want to make your guest feel welcome, but you also don't want to like just sanitize your conversation completely? You don't want to, I suppose, stay away from the controversial side of things. How do you take that call?
I don't generally think of delving deep into controversy कि ये वाली बात करते ही हैं. I know of several hosts in this country who plug certain keywords because they know that'll get them more views या ऐसा कुछ है. Because I think it's a disservice to the art of conversation, or like the sacred conversation जो होती है. That is why when I asked Daaji today, what do you not want to talk about? That's generally, I always ask this of guests. And I learned this from Tim Ferriss, कि उससे क्या होता है, the other person is already at ease. कि आप आराम से हो जाओ, आपको अगर ये बात नहीं करनी, हम नहीं करेंगे. क्यों? क्योंकि मेरे को टाइम्स नाउ से पैसे नहीं मिल रहे ना, NDTV से मिल रहे हैं. मैं एक जर्नलिस्ट नहीं हूँ. एक जर्नलिस्ट पब्लिक को सर्व करता है सच बताने के लिए. एक पॉडकास्टर मेरे हिसाब से, क्योंकि ऐसे कोई बोर्ड नहीं बना हुआ पॉडकास्टर्स का, बातचीत करता है कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है, आपको कैसा लगता है, ये मेरा सवाल है. तो वो दैट इज़ नॉट माई ओनस टू नेसेसरली have truth at all costs. We will serve the public. Look at like these people in power, that kind of thing. That is not really my intention. You will naturally see me going into an uncomfortable territory if it comes naturally from my curiosity. Uske liye I don't have to prepare anything, right? I had a guest on and he was saying कि यार डिप्रेशन वगैरह कुछ होता नहीं, दवाई वगैरह बेकार की बात है. अच्छा दोस्त है मेरा, बहुत फनी इंसान है. तो वहाँ मुझे लगा यार ये गलत है बात. तो मैंने उसका पब्लिकली डिसएग्री करा कि नहीं यार ऐसा नहीं होता, ये चीज़ रियल है, लोग दवाइयाँ भी लेते हैं, ऐसी बात नहीं है. तो उसको एक्नॉलेज करना पड़ा. ऐसे मैंने कई बार करा है. पर मैं हमेशा आई ऑलवेज एयर ऑन द साइड ऑफ बीइंग हार्मोनियस मोर देन कॉम्बैटिव, बिकॉज मे बी आई एम जस्ट लाइक दैट. मे बी आई रादर सेव द कॉम्बैटिवनेस फॉर माई प्राइवेट लाइफ, जहाँ हम ऐसी मज़े वज़े कर रहे होते हैं. पॉडकास्ट आई एम जनरली इंटरेस्टेड व्हाट द अदर पर्सन हैज़ टू से. नाउ ऐसी बात नहीं है कि अगर कोई कॉन्ट्रोवर्शियल बात है तो मैं पूछूंगा नहीं. But I usually like to take consent. I don't want to spring it up on people. Because also this industry of podcasting is being defined in India now. And so we have some responsibility to make sure that people who come on podcasts want to come on podcasts again.
Sure.
Recently my friend, he did some AI art, went to a news channel. उसको briefing दी गई कि आपको हम बड़े अच्छी तरह से सम्मान देंगे, आपको वो कर देंगे. वहाँ जाते ही उसे Your AI art is full of the male gaze. What do you think? So वो उसको बिल्कुल बेट करा. वहाँ पे जाके now he's ambushed. Now he's left speechless. What does he say? Because the anchor is prepared to put him in a tight spot, right? But they pretended that it's all about celebrating your achievements. That is distrust.
And I find that a lot of the podcast that I consume, I find that a great substitute for the news, because fake news is such a huge thing, and paid media is such a huge thing, that podcast has a certain honesty which comes from what you spoke about, the sacredness of the conversation, I suppose, just connecting one-on-one with another person. What do you think? Actually, I love the name Dostcast. Ye kaise? What is the...
Oh, the previous
evolution?
podcast was called the Vinamre Kasanaa show. But if you were to talk about it in a conversation, hey bro, kya tu the Vinamre Kasanaa show sunta hai? Kitna lamba naam hai na? So that is when my marketing mind kicked on. I was like, it has to be memorable and short. And if it can be a verb, wonderful. If I can replace, hey bro, I'm in a Dostcast, as opposed to I'm in a podcast. तो अभी वो अर्ली टाइम था, अभी लोगों का सभी मौका है. बहुत सारे ऐसे नाम हैं जो आप कास्ट के आगे लगा सकते हो जो हिंदी है. फिर मौका नहीं आएगा. After this, market gets saturated, it's going to be hard. So if you like chai cast, what? अभी वो, because it's all memorable.
I think chai pe charcha is taken. So
chai pe charcha is taken, but again, that's too long, right? If it's CPC, I just think about memorability. तो memorability मेरे को लेनी थी, and वो हो गई मेरे ख्याल से.
Wow. So lastly, what's the future hold, Vinamra? Where do you see yourself going from here? Or do you take it a day at a time?
I honestly, to be super honest, लोग तो ऐसे ही बोलते हैं नहीं यार जी डे एट अ टाइम है, ऐसी एक जेनेरिक. मैं एक्चुअली बहुत ज़्यादा सोच रहा हूँ उसके फ्यूचर के बारे में, बिकॉज आई स्टैंड एट अ जंक्शन वेयर it's going well, and I have to make a difficult choice between growing the podcast more and being more exposed and having more physical conversations, or toning it down a little and exploring more of ज़िंदगी में मुझे क्या करना है, because I work essentially as an employee of Dostcast. Like I serve the podcast and its listeners. So there's been almost no me in the last year. It's just been building this from the ground up. मैं कंटेंट तो बहुत साल से बना रहा हूँ, अब जाके सक्सेस आई है, 4-5 साल हो गए. तो अब I'm thinking, do I take this on the road so that I can also, because if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
44.
44, right? You've lived a life where kal bhi immediately you had some stories to tell about Regal Cinema and then Hard Rock Cafe and so. As a 25-year-old, I don't want my life to just be मैंने पॉडकास्ट ये करा वो करा ये करा वो करा ये करा वो करा. मैं चाहता हूँ कि मेरी ज़िंदगी के अंदर ना और कहानियाँ हों. And for that to happen, you need to be immersed in an environment where you don't have the stress of, or rather the excruciating discipline of producing 2 episodes a week. I'm just being super real. मैं चाहता हूँ कि अगले 2 साल के अंदर मैं स्पेन जाऊँ या मैं स्काई डाइविंग करूँ. मैं जेनेरिक बातें बोल रहा हूँ. जो एक कोट एंड कोट 25 साल का इंसान सोचता है ना कि वो जो एक इमर्सिव एक्सपीरियंसेस होते हैं जिनको आप बाद में बोलते हैं, these are the stories of my life. I feel like those have really toned down in the last year because of building this. And I want that back up because I run the risk of being jaded in my conversation otherwise. If you sit in the studio all day and you take the money and you take it so much, eventually आप फिर ये सोचते हो कि और व्यूज़ कैसे बढ़ाऊँ और controversial कैसे हूँ. आप पे कहने के लिए कुछ नहीं बच जाता.
That's so true. And you mentioned that word this morning in your conversation with Daaji, jadedness. That's very real in almost anything that we do. The jadedness can come there, So it's like, what I'm hearing is like, you want to live life rather than just talk about it.
Right. And I think कि उसका effect है. मतलब मैं recently कतर गया वर्ल्ड कप देखने के लिए, sponsored by a brand. Now, in the fabric of my life, I have a story, right?
Sure.
चाहे 2 दिन का है, my experience in Qatar. And so this body that is usually reserved to being in one room with several interchangeable people as they come and podcast now has a new story. वो 2 हफ्ते की स्टोरी हो गई, फिर वो 3 हफ्ते की हो गई, कुछ हो गई. जितना वो हो सकता है ना, उतना बेटर मैं भी होस्ट हूँ. उससे अच्छी तरह I can serve people, right? If I don't, this is the problem that I see. I think people are so eager to get their voice out to the world that they forget to live life. When you don't live life, what you say is not novel or fresh.
Also, the uncertainty I think people are scared of, right? I mean, there is a certain certainty in Dostcast that, but you take that away and there's uncertainty, right?
100%. people always tell me कि अब तो मिलियन जाना है, अब तो 2 मिलियन जाना है. तो वो जो वर्टिकल लैडर है ना करियर सक्सेस की, वो सब लोगों ने प्लान कर रखी है. तो अब मैं उस पर चढ़ूँ, ठीक है, उस पर भी चढ़ते रहेंगे, पर अगर उस पर ही चढ़ते रहेंगे तो फिर बाकी चीज़ें रह जाएंगी. इट्स लाइक यू आर नोटोरियसली नोन फॉर वन थिंग एंड सो योर ईगो गेट्स इन्वॉल्व इन दैट. इट्स लाइक ओ आई एम दिस पॉडकास्ट होस्ट, यही फिर यही बच जाएगा ज़िंदगी के अंदर. मतलब आई डोंट वांट टू साउंड लाइक nihilistic or whatever, but I just think my psyche is telling me for the future it's time to balance things out a little bit. So
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vinamra, for sitting down with us. That was really lovely. And thank you for sharing everything, and wish you all the best in all your endeavors in future, whatever they may be.
thank you, Rudy. I thought हम तो sound bite ले रहे हैं, हम तो podcast करने बैठ गए. Crazy.
It was really nice. It was wonderful.
I also want to commend you as a podcast host because I have never talked about some of these things before, and I think it takes a really good question asker, a good conversationalist to get things out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. You're too kind. Thank you so much.
Thank
Vinamra.
you.
That was lovely.
So that was my conversation with Vinamre Kasanaa. To hear more such conversations, please subscribe to this channel, and also you can find us on Spotify on the Kanha channel. That is KANHACAST. Vinamre's interview with Daaji dropped on the Dostcast channel this afternoon, so do check it out. Thank you for listening. This is Hill Dog signing off. Woof woof.